And we are back to discuss more House of the Dragon with the trailer Q&A, focusing on the Q&A portion of the Black trailer. Because HBO released dueling trailers, I thought it'd be appropriate to release dueling Q&A videos for each faction. And just like before, if you're a show-only fan who hasn't read the books, don't worry, I'll keep it as spoiler-free as possible for you, so you can go in blind but informed. And of course, before we get started, please be sure to leave a like and comment, I greatly appreciate it. But now, let's get into it. The first question is, will Rhaenyra be using the same banners that she used in the books? I hope so, because the Black Dragon is actually used later on in Targaryen history and it's associated with rebellion. But HBO's graphic designers and video editors thought it'd be fitting to make the Black Targaryen sigil the center emblem of the Black trailer. However, it does look like Rhaenyra won't be using the quartered sigil from the books, but the traditional Targaryen banners of the red dragon on the black background, which I'm fine with. I'm assuming the writers felt that her sigil from the books would confuse casual viewers, and as you can see on screen, it's a lot to take in. Her personalized sigil is the normal Targaryen red dragon that appears twice, quartered with the sigil of House Arryn because Rhaenyra is half Arryn from her mother, and the seahorse of House Velaryon, who were among her major allies and basically her kin. House Targaryen has married into House Velaryon before in the past, and Rhaenyra's great-grandmother was a Velaryon, so she does have some Velaryon blood. But for the most part, I really don't mind either way. The sigil change for both factions, they're fine. I'm not a super book purist, and I'm okay with the change, as long as it makes sense. Next question, why are they called the Black Faction? Oh boy, you've probably heard me complain about this often, and if you're tired of it, then I'll put a timestamp here so you can skip to the next question. And no, it's not a racial thing because of the Velaryons, who in the books are white people. There's just no reason they should be called that, nor have they been called that in the show. Let me explain. In the books, there's an anniversary party that happens between Alicent and Viserys. Alicent shows up in a green dress, while Rhaenyra shows up in the traditional red and black dress. Ever since then, both sides and those who supported them at court wore those colors to solidify their allegiance and who they supported overall. In the show, however, Alicent wore the green dress to Rhaenyra's wedding, where Rhaenyra wore a white dress. That's it. It's such a weird thing because showrunner Ryan Condal has proven how much of a superfan he is by inserting random-ass obscure facts and moments from the books into the show, but then missed the whole black and green thing entirely. It's just not necessary. Next question, and this is one I get a lot. Does Rhaenyra actually have legitimacy here to be the heir or even queen? So the situation is somewhat complicated, but I'll try my best. In Westerosi law, the trueborn son does take precedent over the trueborn daughter, with the exception in Dorne, but they aren't part of the Seven Kingdoms yet, so don't worry about them. The Targaryens rule over Westeros, so in a sense, they should also be bound by the law of the land, right? Well, kind of not really. They're the rulers, and the king can do as he likes, and they have the power to enforce that with the dragons. You also have the doctrine of exceptionalism that was pushed by Rhaenyra's grandfather, Old King Jaehaerys, and it states that the Targaryens did not have their roots in Andalos, where most Westerosi come from, but in Valyria, where different laws and traditions held sway. The Targaryens wed brother to sister as Valyrians had always done, and as the gods had made them this way, it was not for mortal men to judge. This was done so that the Faith of the Seven wouldn't get mad at them for practicing incest, but you could also argue that, through this doctrine, they could pick and choose their heirs as well, because why not? If that's how they did it in Valyria, then why can't they continue that here, just like the incest? In fact, Rhaenyra's grandfather, Jaehaerys, again, did exactly this. He chose Viserys as king when they did the Council of 101 back in the first episode. Even though Jaehaerys decided to let the realm vote on it, he had the ultimate say. He didn't have to follow the popular vote at all, he just chose to. But it gets even more ridiculous when you realize that in Westerosi law, it's a daughter before an uncle. But with the Targaryens, after the Council of 101, for them at least, it became an uncle before a daughter. Because remember, the whole conflict with Daemon and Viserys in episode 1 was Daemon being passed over for Rhaenyra. So if we're following Targaryen tradition either before the council or after, Rhaenyra still takes it. But if we're following Westerosi tradition, minus Dorne, then it would be Aegon, since he is Viserys' true-born son. The conflict here is which traditions do we follow? The king's right to choose his heir, or the country's old ways? Keep in mind that the Targaryens are from Valyria. They're not from Westeros. But also, the Hightowers are from Westeros. So, which ways do we follow? This is what Alicent and Otto Hightower are doing. They're pushing Westerosi traditions of the son will always take over, regardless if there is a firstborn daughter. However, the Targaryens, once again, they have this whole thing where they go back and forth on them choosing their heir or just passing over others to choose others. It's a whole complicated mess, and that's the point. George R. R. Martin eventually settles all of this when fans asked him a question back in 2006, and he states that after the Dance of Dragons Civil War, which is what we're watching now, it's decided that women would only come after all the men in Targaryen succession. So, at least after this war that we're about to watch, it's all settled. Next question, Cregan and Jace at the Wall is original? A lot of you have asked me varying questions about this in specific, and yes, in my Black trailer breakdown I mentioned how that is technically an original storyline. In the books, Rhaenyra's son Jace goes to Winterfell to ensure the support of Cregan Stark, and of course, you can't have a Game of Thrones spin-off without a Stark in the story. But them going to the Wall is original, and when you have the Wall, you either have wildlings or White Walker shenanigans. There are strong rumors that we may get something akin to the White Walker plot for House of the Dragon, but that doesn't make a lot of sense considering if Cregan knew about the Walkers or the Whites, then how come he didn't leave behind any writings for Ned Stark in Game of Thrones, or any other future Starks for that matter, to look over? We'll have to see how this plays out, and hopefully there's a definitive answer. Before I move on from this one topic, I do want to point out, once again, that we're getting a lot of original storylines and scenes for characters who don't do much in the books because, once again, showrunner Ryan Condal is stretching out the series, likely on HBO's orders. So much was supposed to happen in Season 2, but a lot of that has been split so we could have more seasons, and HBO will have more Game of Thrones content to dish out. Naturally, this wouldn't be a problem, but remember, HBO did the same thing with Dave and Dan. The original Game of Thrones television outline was 7 seasons, and then finish it off with a series of movies. HBO said no, which is why a lot of Season 6 was characters just sitting around doing nothing. If Ryan Condal can give us some decent filler to pad out the series, then all is well. Some of the best moments in the original Game of Thrones were scenes specifically filmed to extend the runtime, like the famous Robert and Cersei conversation in Episode 5. And last question, who is Rhaenyra talking to at the table? So, I mentioned this in the Black's trailer breakdown, but I didn't go into too much detail. It's a blink and you'll miss it situation, but these are the dragon seeds. It's a word used to describe the bastards of Valyrian descent, usually fathered by members of House Targaryen or House Velaryon. In order to win the war quickly, Rhaenyra needs more dragons, and, as Daemon pointed out, they have plenty on the islands, but they need riders. The dragon seeds, through their Valyrian blood, would be able to tame these dragons fairly quickly and help turn the tide of war. The problem here is that these people are people, and people can be fickle with their loyalties, especially when they aren't tied to a house and have a dragon. Rhaenyra understands that if she wants to secure the Iron Throne, these riders would need to be loyal to her, and she would need to promise them quite a bit, and that's probably the purpose of that dinner conversation. But guys, that is it for today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Give the video a like, it helps out a lot. And consider subscribing for more Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon videos, or supporting the Patreon page for some exclusive content. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Have a good one.